Hello. Welcome to Monday Masterclass. Got some people hanging out, waiting to get in. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Monday Night Masterclass. Excuse me, this hair is a little cray. Got a killer upper body pump earlier today, and it was not hair wash day. Welcome. Let me go live on Facebook and then we will dive into the topic. Glad to have you guys with me tonight. It's gonna be a good one. Keto. There we are. Looks like we got people excited about mini cutting and learning about mini cutting. And we are live on Facebook. Yay, okay. Cool. All right, my ladies in Facebook, in the group, if you are watching there, do me a favor and drop a comment so I can be sure that the comments are working. And pull up the chat here in Zoom. Great. So if you're in a place where you can't speak, but you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat. All right, Grace is there. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Lana. Maria's in here. Awesome. Cool. We are good to go on Facebook, good to go on Zoom. Let's talk about mini cutting, shall we? All right. First off, what inspired this topic? If you follow me on Instagram, I posted recently that I've been in a building season for 7 months or so now since getting off stage in December. And I have been pestering my coach for a while to let me do a mini cut because I was feeling a little fluffy and a little uncomfortable eating so much food and being at a little bit of a higher body fat percentage than I really like to be or really wanted to maintain at in this off season. So, of course, my coach being a great coach, just like me, good coaches have to have good coaches, and I've got a great one. He kept saying no, which is exactly what I would have done as a coach. So let me just share that by saying, I get whatever you're going through because I've probably gone through it myself. As a client, I can be very much like my clients, and so I need a coach as well to rein me in and keep me doing the things I need to do. So all that to say, he kept saying, no, it's not time yet. And then finally he said yes. So I just started my mini cut, which is going to be about 6 weeks long. And at the end of this masterclass, I will share with you how, if you're interested in doing a mini cut and cutting with me, I'm actually relaunching my Keto Bikini Body 6-week summer shred, and it is a mini cut. So I'll be sharing more details about that after the 4th of July. So this Wednesday, the 5th, I will share the details, all that entails, but I'll share a little bit more about that at the end of this call. So all of that being on my mind lately, I thought, you know what? I've done a cutting masterclass last year. I have a whole series of masterclasses that is all about the seasons. And these are kind of like the seasons of an athlete. And everything I do in this group and everything that I share publicly is to help those who are not competitive bodybuilders learn the kinds of things that competitive bodybuilders and fitness models and athletes of all kinds, the tips and tricks and strategies and things that we do to get the kind of results that we get, so that you can implement that in your journey, in your way, in a way that works with your context, and get incredible results yourself. So that's what everything I do is all about. It's telling me that my internet is unstable. It has kicked me off my Wi-Fi. Give me just a sec. Hopefully it'll reconnect. Please work, please work. There it goes. All right. I'm back on my Wi-Fi. Hey, Celeste, happy 4th. Shayna's on. Woo, woo. Okay, got more and more joining us. Yay. All right, so tonight's masterclass, all about mini cuts. I just told you why I'm doing it. I'm in the middle of a mini cut myself. So, or not in the middle, I just started it. I'm only about a week and a half in. So I wanted to do a little bit tonight about what is a mini cut? How is it different from a cut, from a regular cut? When and why do bodybuilders and athletes and fitness models do mini cuts? So what is the purpose? Why would you do it? When would you do it? And then who should not be doing it? When is not a good idea to do it? And then what is involved? How do you execute a mini cut successfully? So that's what we'll dive into right now. First and foremost, in order to really understand what's different between a mini cut and a cut, you need to know how to execute a successful cut. So check out, this is what I was saying before my internet went out, or my Wi-Fi went out. Check out my series on building, cutting. I think I did a reverse dieting. I may have also done a maintenance. I think I did all 4. Cutting, building, as I like to call it, not bulking, because we're not trying to put on a whole bunch of body fat. Cutting, building, reverse dieting, and maintenance. I have videos on all of those. Check out the guides section of the group, or you can always search in the search bar of the group to find any topic you're interested in. So if you search for cutting or cutting season, you will find that masterclass. That is a really good one to understand how to properly execute a full cut, a regular cut. I'll explain a little bit here about what's different about a mini cut, and it may sound to some of you like a cut. And that is because, unfortunately, what we see out in the space, the challenges that are happening all the time, the body transformation, this, that, and the other, the programs that you're being bombarded with ads for, they're run more like mini cuts than they are like cuts. And so, unfortunately, none of us are ever really taught how to properly cut in a way that we are not ruining our metabolism, downregulating our system, depleting ourselves, becoming exhausted, losing muscle mass, all of these things, or really depleting our health. So I say all that as kind of as a warning, and I'll get into it in a little bit more detail, that mini cutting is not for everyone, and it is certainly not to be done all the time. But unfortunately, what I see is when we diet, it's done too much like a mini cut, and it can be detrimental. So, all right. If you have questions throughout on anything that I'm saying, drop a question in the chat and I will answer it. Or any other questions that may pop up along the way. All right, first and foremost, what is a mini cut and how is it different from a regular cut? Excuse me. I totally burned the roof of my mouth making lasagna for Coach Bronson. Maria Emmerich keeps putting out these recipes that he sees and then he's like, ooh, that sounds good. And so I was like, okay, let me try making him this Maria Emmerich lasagna. And I tasted the meat sauce before it was cooled, and I don't know if I'll be tasting anything for the rest of the week. I digress. And of course, if it comes out good, I will share my recipe because I'm doing it a little differently than hers. All right, back to the topic at hand, mini cutting. All right, so the main difference between a mini cut and a regular cut is the duration. A regular cut, and the way that you really should be thinking about a cut, and first of all, for anybody, let me just back up, that may not even know what a cut is in the first place. A cut is just a fat loss phase. Essentially, it stands for cutting calories or cutting macros or cutting, typically it's cutting calories because you're trying to cut body fat, you're trying to get rid of body fat. So it's just a fat loss phase, otherwise known as dieting, pretty much. That's the way we always called it growing up, right? It was dieting. I have a vacation, I'm gonna diet, or I have to get off X amount of pounds I've gained, I'm going to go on a diet. Right? That's basically what a mini cut is, or that's what a cut is. That is also what a mini cut is. The difference being a mini cut is for a shorter period of time. So we're talking, it could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks. You probably don't want to go beyond 6 weeks with a mini cut. Now you're getting into regular cut territory. A regular cut or regular fat loss phase can be anywhere from 8 weeks to a year. Depending on how you do it. And there's lots of different ways to do it. If you have a lot to lose, you may be doing it for a year or more. And I should probably do a masterclass on how to do a longer cut. Because typically, and when I talk about cutting season, like for an athlete, is typically going to be anywhere from, let's say, 8 to 24 weeks. My longest preps for show. And when we say prep, typically what we mean is stage prep or show prep. That just same thing means you're going into a cutting phase. And so typically when you hear competition prep, what you're talking about or what that person is talking about is the cutting phase, that phase where we're cutting body fat to get to stage. So for an athlete, that typically is not going to be very long, especially once you become a pro, once you stay relatively lean in the off season. You know, my goal going forward from this point is to never have to do a cut more than 8 to 10, 12 weeks at the most. Most athletes you're going to see cutting for about 12 weeks, 12 to 16, let's say. My longest cuts have been 24, and my shortest ever was a mini cut into a show, and that was about 4 weeks. So that's the main difference. Now, aside from that main difference, there are also some very important differences. Because you're cutting for a shorter period of time, you're dieting for a shorter period of time, a mini cut is much more extreme than a longer cut. A regular longer cut, is pretty much all of the masterclasses that I've done have talked about how to lose body fat slowly and sustainably in a healthy rate of loss so that you're not, like I said, down-regulating your metabolism, you're not losing muscle mass, you're not getting yourself into a worse position than you were when you started. A mini cut can be more extreme, it can be more intense because it's intended for a short period of time, short duration. It has a start date and a stop date. You know exactly when you're going to stop. And then you should have a plan for exiting, which we'll get to when I talk about the how. So in doing so, you can be typically a person who's doing a mini cut can be a lot more dialed in and focused and say, it's okay that I'm giving up all of these favorite foods or junk foods or treats or these extra calories or all these things. It's mentally a little easier to get through because you have that end date. Is this sounding a lot like the diets you've done in the past? Because a lot of the time, this is what I see, right? I see this, I'm going on a 30-day fat loss challenge. I'm going on this 21-day thing. I'm going on this 4 weeks. Usually you hear these things and it's this thought process of, I just have to do this for X number of days. And it helps you be more adherent or compliant to the plan during that time. The tricky thing and the scary thing and the thing that you have to consider is that coming out of that, what do most people do after a diet? Yay, the diet's over, now I can go eat all my favorite stuff again. And that's going to put you right back into the position you were in before. And when you're coming out of an extreme diet or a intense dieting phase, like a mini cut, you are now more susceptible to over-consuming, to putting on body fat very quickly. And so it needs to be done carefully. All right, so that's the two main basic differences: duration, so amount of time spent doing it, and then intensity of it, meaning in a typical cutting phase, regular cutting phase, longer cutting phase, I will generally recommend slow, small calorie changes. And I don't usually talk about it in terms of calories. I talk about it more in terms of macros. But macros come with calories. Calories come with macros. They are two in the same. You can't separate them. So in cutting macros, you're cutting calories. I usually do that very slowly with my clients who are with me for 6 months, and we have a long timeline. I don't want to be cutting them. How many of you have heard on the interwebs, 500 calories, you have to cut by 500 calories to lose a pound of body fat in a week? So, and they do that because they say, well, a pound of body fat is 3,500 calories, and there's 7 days in a week. So 500 times 7 is 3,500. So if you cut by 500 calories, then you will lose a pound a week. This is the crap that has been spoken about in the fitness industry for decades. And unfortunately, this is why so many people jump to this 500 calorie deficit or more every time they try to do a diet, every time they want to do a fat loss phase. If you're going to be losing body fat for 6 months or even 3 months, that is a major shift to make all at once to your body. And then guess what's going to happen? Your body's going to adapt to that. And then it's going to stop losing. And now what? Imagine if you only started at 1,500 calories and now you cut your calories down to 1,000 and now your body's not responding. What are you going to do? Cut it down to 500 calories? Oh boy, do I see a lot of people in keto land doing that with OMAD and fasting, because now that's the only place you can go if you want to keep losing. Now I have to eat only 1 meal a day, 500 calories or less. And now I have to fast for a whole day. That's 0 calories in a day, or 48 hours or 72 hours. And now what's happening? Your body's downregulating even more. Your metabolism is downregulating even more. So the minute you put 10 calories back in, you're gaining weight. This is why we don't want to treat a regular cut like a mini cut. Now in a mini cut, you can do a 500 calorie deficit because it's only going to be for 6 weeks. And another thing that makes it different than a longer cut is that typically in a longer cut, I might start a client at maybe 200 calories or 300 calories as a cut, maybe even 100 calories as a cut. And then week to week, we can adjust those macros if you're not losing. So we can then take another 100 calories out. We can go slowly and we can make incremental changes as the weeks go by. I generally recommend, you'll see in my other masterclasses, I generally recommend to track for 2 to 3 weeks, see what your results are. And if you're not getting those results, after about 3 weeks, you can make a change. So as you can see, this will be like small incremental changes over time to keep you moving in the right direction and to keep your body from adapting too quickly. In a mini cut, instead of making these changes every week, if you're saying I'm going to do a 6-week mini cut, you're not going to be making caloric changes every week of that cut or even 3 weeks in. You're generally going to go to a deep deficit, a much deeper deficit than you would with a slow cut, and you would stay there for the 6 weeks. Your body may adapt a bit by the end of those 6 weeks, but it's not going to be what it would have been if you had been in a longer sustained deficit over time. All right, let's see. Yes, exactly, Celeste. She says, I know plenty who complain that they can only lose on 800 calories because they don't eat enough to start with. Exactly. And that is the perfect segue to move into the why we do mini cuts, who should do a mini cut and who should not, and when. So here's the purpose of a mini cut. The most beneficial time to do a mini cut for an athlete like myself, the way that I'm doing it right now, for any person who has been in a sustained building phase for a good 6 months or more, 6 months to a year, could be even longer than that. So if you've been lifting, your goal has been to build muscle, you may have gained a little body fat, a little extra body fat, more than you wanted to. You have not been in a dieting phase for some time, at least 6 months. So you are not eating in a caloric deficit already. Your calories are not very low for where you should be. Essentially, if you were to go to a calculator online and figure out what your TDEE is, your total daily energy expenditure, and you can do that, just look up TDEE calculator. It will give you an estimate of what your total daily energy expenditure is. That is not the same thing as your BMR. Your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. This is your resting metabolic rate. It is what you burn if you don't do anything but breathe. If you were to just lay in bed and breathe, and that's it all day, that's your BMR. So when people are trying to go under their BMR to lose body fat, that means that you're likely sedentary, but very, very sedentary. But the goal, and hopefully your TDEE is much higher than your BMR. And so when we're in a longer cut, we can cut your calories and you'll still be over your BMR, but you'll be under your TDEE and you'll be able to lose body fat. In a mini cut, we can go deeper. We might go down to your BMR, but it's only going to be for a short period of time. And then we're going to safely move out of that phase and back into a maintenance phase. So athletes do it when we've not been cutting for an extended period of time. So take that for yourself and say, okay, have I been dieting the last 6 months? Particularly the last 3 months. Like if I've literally been on and off of a diet all year and I have not ever gotten my calories up to a higher level, and I'm barely sustaining my weight at 1,200 calories, and I can't lose, and if I sneeze in the wrong direction or look at something that's a calorie over, then I'm going to gain weight. A mini cut is not for you. It's time to build that metabolism up. Focus on muscle gain, muscle building. This doesn't have to mean fat gain, but you can do essentially what you would need is a reverse diet. You would need to go into a reverse dieting phase. So go check out my masterclass on reverse dieting and execute that before you think about a mini cut or a longer cut. Because at this point, your body is not responding to you and there's something else that you need to do. Who else is it not for? It is not for my yo-yo dieters, my binge and restrict ladies, my ladies that are, now I'm on a diet, oh, I messed up, now I'm off my diet. Now I'm gonna do a whole bunch of cardio to try to get rid of what I did, or I'm going to starve myself and go on a fast today to fix it. And you're doing that on and off. It may not be day to day, it may be week to week, or for a couple of weeks, you're good. And then you mess up, and then you binge, and you overeat. And so you're in this pattern of like under eating and overeating. If you're doing that, first of all, that is a form of disordered eating. That is a form of purging. If you're doing compensatory behaviors like fasting, like over-exercising, like under-eating to make up for overeating, that is a form of disordered eating and you need to get help. Not just help on health and fitness, but help from a mental health professional. So please seek that help if you're in those kinds of patterns, because they can be very destructive, and it is certainly not time for a cut of any sort. It's only going to drive those behaviors more. So absolutely not. And that goes for all forms of disordered eating, or doesn't have to be, you don't have to be diagnosed with an eating disorder, but if you have this relationship with food that needs work, going on into a deep deficit is not a good idea. So this is not the time for a mini cut. But let's say you haven't been tracking, you've been kind of off track, as we like to say, or on vacation mode, or just too lax. with your eating. You know it, right? Maybe you haven't been tracking, and maybe you haven't been in a building phase per se. You haven't been in the gym trying to build muscle and purposely eating more and tracking all of your macros and calories. You just know that for the last few months, let's say 4 to 6 months, you're like, I know I've really let things go, and I have more body fat than I want to have. And boy, would I love to just get this off, or at least get some of this off pretty quickly so I can feel better. And then I can get into a maintenance phase, or I'd be happy to be in a maintenance phase for a little while, or go into a longer, sustained, more careful cut, or go into a reverse diet and then do a cut again. But I just need something to get me back on track. Kind of like that reset, right? When you're looking for that thing to kind of jumpstart you back into a healthier lifestyle. That might be a good time for a general person, not an athlete, but any normal person who's like, yeah, you know what? I've indulged a bit, after the holidays feeling, right? Typically it's like, maybe we're on point, we're on top of things in the summertime, and then the fall hits and then the holidays hit. And here we go. It's like February, March, April, or even now, May, June. And you're like, man, I just kept saying I was going to get it together. I just haven't gotten it together. But I'm really motivated to get this off. And I know that if I committed to a short-term thing, then I would stick to it. That might be a good time for a mini cut. Okay, so talked a little bit about who should do it, who shouldn't do it, when to do it. Let's talk about what it looks like to do a mini cut. So I already kind of talked about the calories piece. Now, the key here, I'm going to give you some high-level nutrition, training, mindset things for mini cutting that make them successful. Number one, you pick your start date, you pick your end date. And this mindset piece has to be, I'm going all in for this 2 weeks, or this 4 weeks, or this 6 weeks. This is when I would say it would be a great idea to put something on the calendar at the end of that time frame. For me, I'm doing this for photo shoots. It is our WBFF Worlds out in Vegas. It is the World Championships. I'm not competing. I'm not competing until December this year. So that is a very long runway. I still have 5 months to prep for that show. I don't want to do a 5-month cut. So what we are doing is, there's something on the calendar in August. I'll be flying out to Vegas, shooting with photographers, doing video shoots, working the show, supporting my ladies who are my friends and team members who are competing there. So that's a big event for me. So that's at the end of my 6-week cut. And that is going to be the thing that I think about whenever I think, let me have this extra bite or this extra taste of something. Nope, I'm dialed in for this 6 weeks and I've got that. Don't mind, Bronson. It's time to take the tinfoil off the lasagna. How's it looking? Is the cheese melty?
Tasty too.
Can't wait to see the finished product. So put something at the end of that mini cut that is like your little motivation, the extrinsic motivator for you. Internally, you're going to need to be motivated. You're going to have to go into the deep why and all of that. But for a short-term thing, it's great to have something on the calendar. Family get together, vacation, photo shoot, something like that. Okay, the other piece of this, and to make that 100% commitment that I'm going all in to do this, because it's not going to be comfortable. The way that you do a mini cut, it feels more difficult than a longer term cut because you are being a little more drastic. So you're going to have to cut your food pretty significantly, and you're likely going to feel it. I felt it only after the first couple of days this time. And now I'm kind of settling in and I feel a little better. My coach thought it would take like 7 or 8 days before I felt it, but I felt it right away. So you're going to feel hungry. you're going to feel tired because it's literally stripping fat off your body. And so that's energy. Fat is energy. So it's having to convert the fat in your body to energy and use it and get rid of it. So you're going to be tired. All of these things that a lot of us competitors feel toward the end are the kinds of things that you're going to feel during a mini cut. Now, I will say this as well. If you've been in a period of time where you haven't been on point and you've been eating junk and kind of going off plan, you already probably feel pretty blah. Or even if you've been in a building phase for a while and you put on that extra body fat and you're not feeling comfortable and you're feeling like you're forcing food, it's actually kind of a reprieve at first. It's like, okay, I don't have to stuff myself. I feel a lot better. And then those other things are going to catch up when your body starts to realize it doesn't have that fuel and it starts having to pull from those fat stores. You're going to feel the hunger and the tired, that kind of thing. So first things first, you have to be successful on a mini cut, you have to start tracking. If you haven't already been tracking, you've got to know where you're starting from. And these are the things that we're going to go through in the 6-week shred. So for those who decide to join me for that, I'm going to be going through these things step by step. The first thing, the first week and the 6-week shred that I'm running will actually be an 8-week challenge, because the first week is going to be all this baselining and prep work. And then we dive into the actual cut on the 2nd week. And then we finish it on the 7th week. And then week 8 is all about coming out of it and how to successfully come out of it. So to successfully start, you first have to know where you're starting from. You've got to have all of your biometrics. You've got to track your body weight, ideally your body composition, your measurements would be great. Taking photos at the start would be great. Everything that's going to track where your body is now. And then you want to find out what your macros are right now. This is not from a calculator. This is from actual real life. You want to not change anything. And for a week, keep doing what you're doing and just track it. Log all of your food and see where your macros and your calories land. And here's a good little checkpoint for you, because if you do that and you realize you're only eating 1,100 calories, guess what? You have no room to cut. So now you know cutting is not going to be, you can't move forward with the mini cut. If you track your calories and track your macros and you find out that here you are eating 3,000 calories a day, you've got a lot to work with. So that's a great starting point. And this is something where when clients first start working with me, or when you first join a challenge and you have to start tracking, you try to be really good for the coach because you want your coach to not see the bad things you're doing or the things you think are bad. So you just don't track those things. And then guess what? If I see that as a coach, and like, let's say you want to join the challenge and you join my challenge and you track your stuff, and I see that you're only eating 1,200 calories. I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, I'm giving you your money back. You need to go into a reverse diet. So don't do that with me or any other coaches or challenges that you join. Be honest, log what you eat. So log what you're eating, get your baseline macros and your baseline biometrics, your body weight and whatnot. Then at the end of that week, you're going to see if you're still gaining weight or maintaining, and you see where your calories are, then you can do a little double check and pull up that TDEE calculator and see what it tells you your TDEE should be. And if your calories are at or higher than that, you know that you've been in a maintenance or a building phase, or you've been in a fat gain phase maybe, right? Which none of us ever intend to do. But then you kind of have validation that you're in a good place to start this mini cut. And from there, you also have a good understanding of how much you can cut from there. So from your starting calories and macros, ideally on a low carb, ketogenic, carnivore protocol or way of life, your carbs are already pretty low. Your fats are likely going to be the thing that's really high if you're truly over consuming and in a place where your body's putting on body fat. If that's the case, then you know exactly where to cut from. What you don't want to do in a mini cut or any cut for that matter, is to cut your protein. That's the other big thing that I see women doing wrong. Or at least throughout my life until I got into the keto space and started doing this, what I saw and what I still see with my mother and family members, they cut the protein. And that's the thing we don't want to do. So first thing you want to establish in your mini cut, high protein, keep your protein where it is or bump it up. And I have a protein masterclass and a macros masterclass that you can check out. But my 3 checkpoints for protein are, if you're not yet eating your 1 gram per pound of your lean body mass, then that should be your first goal. So let's say you calculate your body fat percentage, you calculate how much lean mass you have, and you have about 100 pounds of lean body mass. And you're only eating 70 grams of protein a day. For your mini cut, you want to set your protein at least 100 grams. At least get to that lean body mass number. Your next goal is going to be your ideal body weight number. So let's say you have your 180 pounds and you want to lose 50 pounds. And then 130 would be how many grams of protein you want to start with. And if you've already been eating that much protein, then I would go up to your body weight. Particularly for any of my ladies whose body fat percentage is under 35%, then you definitely want to go with your total body weight. Unless you've been eating so little protein that would be a massive jump for you, go up to your body weight, your total body weight and protein in grams. If you're 35% or over in body fat, this is where I would aim more toward that ideal body weight than your total body weight, because that would be a lot. Probably more protein than you could comfortably eat in a day. So pick your protein target, and it should be an increase from where you were when you were gaining body fat. So that this phase you're coming out of maintenance or gaining, and you want to go into this mini cut, you want to increase your protein. Maybe it's just 10 grams, maybe it's 30 grams, depending on where you're at. But give a little bump to that protein, because that's what's going to keep you full, and that's what's going to keep muscle on your body while you're in a deep deficit, which is what we're going to do with this mini cut. So we want to cut from our fuel reserves, that's carbs and fats, and we want to keep our protein high. So Grace had a good question. What's the minimum starting calories? That is going to depend on the person. It is going to be wildly different from one person to another. So this is why I say, look at your metrics, look at your starting macros and calories where what you're already eating, and then compare that against your TDEE from the calculator. That's going to be an estimate, but that's going to basically tell you, like, if everything was functioning the way it should be, you should be able to eat X number of calories in a day. If you're under that, especially if you're severely under that, then you're too low already to do a mini cut. Okay, so bumping up protein, cutting calories. We're cutting calories from carbs and fats. If you've been in a vacay effort mode and you've been eating all the carbs and the fats and whatever, right? Donuts and pizza and things that have a lot of both, then I have good news for you. You don't have to cut your fat super low. You can just take it from your carbs. If you've been eating over 100 carbs, or God forbid, 200 or more, boom, you can cut a lot of it from carbs. And you can basically just take whatever that high carb was that you were eating, take it down to a comfortable level. And this is also going to depend on the person. In my mini cuts, I'm going to have options for low carb paleo, keto, ketovore, and carnivore. So depending on the person, I'm going to have a questionnaire and an application. This is going to be an application only kind of a thing, because like I said, I'm not going to try to take anybody through this that is not in a good situation for it. So there's a questionnaire I'm going to review before I accept people into the program. And I'm not going to take your money if I'm going to make you less healthy. That's never my goal. So that being said, I always look at where's a person mentally, physically with food. Do they have things, medical reasons why they really need to be keto or carnivore? Do they have a real attachment to carbs, particularly healthy carbs, let's say fruit or veggies or even starchy veggies, but they're just like struggling with the concept of even eating mostly meat? I may take a more paleo approach with someone like that. So you kind of have to know yourself, know where you're at with your relationship with food and why you're interested in keto or carnivore or whatnot, and determine whether this is just a pattern of disordered eating and a poor relationship with food cropping its ugly head, saying, I'm afraid of carbs, so I need to go keto. It's the only way I can lose weight. Or I buy into keto. I understand the mechanisms and I believe in it. I believe this is the healthiest way that I can live. And so I may have gotten off track, but I believe in this way of life and I want to go keto. I want to go carnivore because I believe that that's how I'm going to be optimal. So kind of assess that for yourself. If you want to join the challenge, I will help assess that with you and tell you where I think you should be. So decide on that. And that decision then determines where you set your carbs. If you're like, balls to the walls, I'm going carnivore, all in, baby. Set your carbs at 15 total, 20 total carbs to allow for little extras here and there from your eggs or your coffee if you still drink coffee and stuff like that, right? I did this last cut mostly carnivore, so my carbs sat at around 15 grams total the entire cut, the longer cut that I did. This time my carbs have been at 50 because I've been doing berries and I've just had a lot more options, more paleo options, but I'm cutting for my mini cut. I was at 30 to 50 grams of carbs. I'm cutting my carbs down to 20 to 25 grams total. So assess for yourself, where are my carbs starting and where can I comfortably put them? If you want to do keto, then total carbs would likely be anywhere between, let's say, 25 to, you could probably get up to 40 if you're doing a lot of veggies and like fibrous foods, so you're getting lower net carbs. But I always recommend, and you'll hear this on every masterclass, track your total carbs. Don't become a victim of the net carbs, and don't be fooled by things that have labels that say net carbs, because the total carbs are more. So track and log your total carbs. So you may want to come down, for you, maybe you'll set them at 50, maybe you'll set them at 25, maybe you'll set them at 15. It's going to depend on which way of eating that you want to do. So some of your calories are going to come from carbs. Each carb, 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories. So let's say you cut your carbs by 100 grams. That's 400 calories right there. That may be all you need to get into a deep enough deficit. And then you can keep your fats nice and high wherever they were before. If, for instance, you were already low carb and so your carbs never really got above 50, but you want to dial that in a little bit like I am, let's say you're doing what I'm doing, dropping from 50 to 25. 25 carbs is about 100 calories. That's not much, right? So I have to pull from my fat to get into that deficit. So in my case, as an example, I was eating around 135 to 140 grams of fat per day. Really closer to the 135 mark. And we cut my fat down to 105. Now, in a regular cut, that would never happen. I would not be dropping my calories. I would not be dropping my fats by 30 grams. That's a lot. And you can feel it. Hence why I was already hungry after the first couple of days. So you typically hear me on these masterclasses saying, go slow, 10 to 15 grams of fat at a time. So this is only like 100 to 150 calories at a time in a slower, longer cut. In a mini cut, we can go harder. So we cut my fats by 30 grams. That is, each gram of fat is 9 calories. So that's about 3 times 9 is 27. So 270 calories. So around 300 calories are coming from my fats and another 100 coming from my carbs. That's about 400 calories that I cut. So guess where the rest of it is coming from? Because if we're talking about a 500 calorie deficit, which is pretty on average what you would do on a mini cut, for men who weigh a whole lot more and they eat a whole lot more, they could go down more than that. And so, you know, you'll see men talking about mini cuts on their YouTube channels and they're doing like 1,000 calories. They can do that because they're starting from a much higher place. That doesn't mean we can do that. So typically I would say about 500. So the rest of that, because we've cut from the food, guess what I got added to my plan for this mini cut? Cardio. Yay. So as I've talked about in other masterclasses, there's a reason that bodybuilders use cardio, and it's a very specific reason. We do not train on our weight training days to burn calories. That is not what weight training is for. That is not what that's not what lifting, strength training is for. Resistance training is for building muscle and strength and performance and all those things, but not for calorie burn. You burn very little in a weight training session. Cardio is, we use that as another side of the equation with the calorie burn to get ourselves into an energy deficit so that our body pulls from the fat stores. So this is another good example, and Grace, I'm getting right to it, how much cardio, she says. This is another example of how a mini cut is very different from a longer cut. For instance, on my last longer cut for my competition last year, which was about a 24-week cut, we started with no cardio, added about 10 minutes of cardio post-workout on my training days. So that was no more than 40 or 50 minutes total for the week. It was just a add on to the end of my training sessions. And then we started moving that up. So then it went to 15 minutes, and then it went to 20 minutes. And then eventually, I don't remember where I ended the season, maybe 30 minutes or 5 times a week. I don't remember now. But we start small. But in a mini cut, we just go in. So I went from 0 cardio to 20 minutes 4 times a day. 4 times a week, not 4 times a day. I'm not doing an hour of cardio a day, which you will hear some competitors do, but those are competitors that are eating a lot of carbs, which is just yet another reason why I like being a low carb ketogenic competitor. I do not ever have to do as much cardio as my prep sisters have to do. And I like it that way. Yes, Celeste said cardio is hardio. Yeah. Luckily, it's just LISS right now. It's just a low impact steady state. So that's easy enough. I just go for walks. So that's easy enough to do. But you could basically increase the cardio that you're doing and while you're cutting the calories, macros from your fats and or your carbs. Sarah said something about she said, when I eat intuitively, I eat the same amount grams of protein and fat. When I'm more active, I eat more protein, but I don't think I've ever eaten my whole body weight of protein. Oh yeah, girl, that's how you put on the muscle. So you might want to make that your next goal. Grace, I'm not sure which calculator you're using for your TDEE, so I'm not sure what to tell you on that. But play around with it. Look at all of them and see what they all say. And Sarah says, I love riding my bike outside, feels less hard than walking. Yeah, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the options we have with cardio. You don't have to do something you hate. There's something that a lot of competitors use the stair climber. And I'll tell you, it burns calories. It definitely burns more calories. It gets your heart rate up faster than the treadmill, even on the highest incline, and pretty much any other machine. Maybe the rower. The rower might be more because you're getting a full body with that. But that stair climber is a BITCH. And I used to do a lot of that for my preps. And my coach's recommendation this past season was to switch to the bike, the stationary bike. And oh my gosh, it changed my life. It just made it so much easier to sit at the end of the day when I was doing my cardio in the evening after dinner and just sit there and get on TikTok, and just the time flew. So it was a lot easier. So you can use different types of cardio and use something that feels easier for you. Absolutely make it easier to do. So, I mean, essentially what a mini cut is, we got to cut those calories pretty significantly, go into a deep enough deficit that we're driving fat loss right out the gate. And then we keep doing that. We stay consistent with that over the 2, 4, or 6 weeks that we're doing it. In a 6 week, you may have time for like one extra tweak. If let's say 3 weeks in, you're not getting the results you're looking for. Let's back up and talk about results, right? And expectations. I have a masterclass on setting realistic expectations. So let's get into that real quick, because if you're expecting 10 pounds of fat loss every single week of your cut, that's unrealistic. I always say, and this does not change a whole lot with a mini cut. This is the one thing that, unfortunately, sorry, we cannot fight against our own physiology and make fat loss happen faster. If you do that, you're likely also causing muscle loss, and you're going to see weight come down on the scale, but it's not the kind of weight you want. So ideally, if you are doing this in a healthy range, a healthy rate, then a healthy rate of fat loss is going to look like about 1% of your body weight on the scale per week. In a mini cut, because we're being a little more drastic, you may see a little bit more, but you're not going to get 5% of your body fat off every single week. You may get it if you've been eating more carbs at the beginning and you're cutting your carbs significantly. You're going to get that water weight flush. And you know what? That is totally valid. It's not body fat, but damn, it feels good. And that's another reason why, even though I have had more carbs from my coach, I'm deciding I would rather do this more carnivore, because I feel amazing on carnivore. I know that it's water weight. I've seen the fluctuations that happen in my body when I eat higher carb and lower carb. And this can even be 20 grams of carbs, guys. It doesn't have to be over 100 or like 20. Like when I went just last week, the first week of my cut, one day I did a few days of like 20 carbs. And the next couple days I did 40 carbs. Weight went up 2 pounds. Did I freak out? No. I knew exactly why that happened. It wasn't me thinking that I'm stalling my fat loss. So we have to keep our heads about us with this stuff and say, hey, you know what? For my mini cut, I'm going to keep it. After I did that, I said, you know what? I don't want to have to be over analyzing what's happening with my results. I want to make the variables very clear, like a scientific experiment. So I'm going to keep my carbs down to 20, 25, no more than that. And I won't see these big spikes and drops on the scale every day. It'll be a lot more linear, and it'll be a lot easier to see the changes. So that's another kind of feather in the cap of going lower carb. Okay. What else was I going to say about that? So yeah, it's simpler than we think. It just means we're doing this drastic, deep caloric deficit, and drastic because we're going from where we were into it, and we're sustaining that. Like I said, it's going to be more taxing on your body. So a lot of the time people will think they need to change the way that they train during a cut. There's a couple of sides to this. You can do kind of more metabolically active, metabolically demanding type of training. So you can change your training. Let's say you were doing heavy weights, low reps, trying to put on muscle and build. And now you switch to higher reps, lower weights, higher volume maybe, but more like a pump workout. These are the kinds of things we do at the very end of a prep, my last week and a half going to the stage, because I'm so tired and I'm so depleted at that point and my body fat is so low. My strength is just not what it used to be. So I'm not lifting the way I used to. But typically in a longer cut, my first 16 weeks or so, I'm still training the exact same way I was training in the off season. I'm just cutting the calories. I'm cutting. So the cutting part is coming from the food. And then the training is staying the same. Why? Because with that increase of protein I talked about and keeping our training stimulus, teaching and telling and sending the signal to our body to build muscle, this is how we keep our hard-earned muscle while we're burning body fat and losing in that cut. So in a mini cut, I would say, and the way that mine is going to be, you're going to have all your programming built in there, your cardio, your training, everything. I'm kind of taking a little bit of both avenues there. So I would recommend keeping the type of training very similar, unless you've been doing powerlifting, in which case you're likely going to have to shift to something that's more of a hypertrophy bodybuilding style. My training is always a bodybuilding style. So I would take the same bodybuilding style and I may just tweak a couple little things, like going from just doing straight sets. So maybe I'm doing today I did chest, arms, and shoulders. And today's workout was a perfect example. Let's say I was doing in my off season a bench press and then some shoulder exercises individually, and then some bicep curls, and then some tricep kickbacks, all individually. 3 to 4 sets of this, 3 to 4 sets of that. What I might do in a mini cut or in any cutting phase is superset everything. So now, instead of doing one exercise and taking a rest and doing that same exercise 3 times and then taking a rest and then moving on to the next exercise, I would do 2 exercises back to back. What happens when you do supersets or triple sets or giant sets, there's all different kinds, or circuits, for example, the muscles that are the second or third or fourth exercise in that superset or triple set or circuit, those next, every single progressive exercise you're doing in that group is going to get less of your energy, less of your strength. And so you're not able to do those movements all fully to failure the way you would have if you did them in straight sets. But your heart rate's going to get up more. You're going to get more of that pump, like I talked about. You're not going to be able to do as much weight. So these kinds of things, a lot of the time in bodybuilding, are used during a cut of any kind. And so those kinds of things can be done for a mini cut as well. But what I wouldn't want to do is just go to from all strength training to now you're doing circuits and you're taking cardio classes, or you're taking weight classes, but those classes are not really weight training. They're usually done, the reps are done way too fast. There's way too many reps. It's just not really getting anything out of it. So you still want to be giving your body that stimulus. Hey, we want to keep our muscle and we want to grow our muscle, while you're also not giving it enough energy or fuel for it to store that as body fat. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So you can make tweaks to your training, but I wouldn't like totally change it to jumping around with weights. You know what I'm saying? Like a Zumba class. Or what I think I see, what I know I see marketed to women all the time is always circuit training, you know, and thinking that you got to pick up 2-pound weights and do 30 reps. Like, we're not trying to do it like that. All right, so that was, CrossFit. CrossFit's kind of a whole different beast on its own. CrossFit is like everything thrown together. Very, very intense. In general, and this is kind of something for like athletes, right? So strength athletes, powerlifting, like competitive powerlifting, competitive CrossFit, Olympic lifting, anything like that, or performance sports where you have to show up and be at your best and perform at your best, you really want to consider when you're doing something like a mini cut. Once again, this is like the right time for an athlete to use it is in that off season where you don't have to show up at 100% to compete. In a mini cut or any kind of drastic cut, because some people do longer cuts, even though they shouldn't do them this way. Like I said, a lot of people do. You're going to be depleted, and it's going to affect your performance. So that kind of goes into the mindset piece of it is how often are you doing CrossFit? How competitive are you with it? Is this mini cut competing priority for you with your performance? This goes for any sports, but I'd like to put CrossFit in the sports category because it's intense exercise. So for someone, let's say you came to me and you're a CrossFitter and you're like, I have this physique goal, right? And I get that, I get athletes of all kinds coming to me and saying they want this physique goal and they're willing to put these other things on the back burner. I got my kickboxers, I got my runners, I've got my CrossFitters, I've got my powerlifters. And, I tell them that's going to have to take a back seat right now. If the aesthetic physique goals are more of a priority, it's going to be really difficult to keep them both up to that level, the performance and the aesthetic goals at the same time. Hope that helps. Doesn't mean you can't cut, but what I would probably say to athletes that are really committed to their sport, a slower cut would be a better idea. A slower, longer duration cut, because you're not going to feel the effects of it the same way. Great question. Anybody else have any questions? And then on the mindset piece, feel free to drop any questions. On the mindset piece, the real key to a successful mini cut is how you end it. Because it doesn't matter how much body fat you lost during that 2, 4, or 6 week period. If you come out of it and you start binging, it's all lost. It's like, why did you even bother? You just put in all that work for nothing. And not only for nothing, but you'll set yourself back even more, because after a deep deficit and essentially quick weight loss, you're going to get to the end of that period, and now your body is prime for overeating, like I said at the beginning, overconsumption and quick fat gain. So the last thing you want to do is just come off of it. The diet's done, 30-day challenge is done. Now I want to eat all my foods again, right? No. You need to find the new maintenance. It could be the same maintenance you had before. So it could be that you can come right back to your old calories. That's unlikely. It's more likely that your body may have done a little adapting. So you're likely going to be, your maintenance calories are going to be a little lower than they were before. Hopefully, though, higher than they were on the cut. Another reason why we don't do a mini cut willy-nilly, and we don't do it like every 6 weeks. We have to have had a sustained period of time, 6 months or more, where we were not cutting before we go into it. And then at the end of it, ideally, what you're going to want to do is slowly bring those calories back up while maintaining your level of training and slowly cutting that cardio out. So I would do a reverse dieting phase. Now, because this is a mini cut, you can do a much shorter reverse dieting phase than you would have to do for a longer cut, because likely your metabolism has not yet adapted fully. So you're not going to be maintaining at that low level of calories. But at that point, I would probably say, like, try bringing the calories up by 200. Keep it clean. Don't go off plan and start eating a bunch of junk. Keep it clean, continue to track for another couple of weeks and watch what your body does. And if you're gaining too fast, dial it in a little bit more and make it an even slower increase. You can go as slow as 100 calories a week, or even I've seen people do 50. I think that's a little too slow personally, because your body's going to be depleted and it's really going to want some food. And in a phase like that, you do that for a week and it's really just like a refeed to your body. So it's no big deal. Usually your body's going to bounce right back, and it's not going to put on a lot of body fat too quickly. But that's if you're stay consistent with your training and slowly add those calories back in. Oh, Deb, yeah, we can totally talk. I got you, girl. DM me and I'll we can get a call on the calendar. And that's another thing about the shred. Anybody who joins the shred, a call with me will be a part of that. So I'll wrap that into the whole price of the shred, because at the end of the shred in particular is when I want to get on a call with everybody who does it, because I want to make sure every single person is coming out of this healthy, and not in a worse place or not spiraling. So that'll be part of it as well. I said I'd share a little bit of details. I think I kind of interwove it throughout this topic, but Wednesday, the day after the 4th, I will be going either live or I'll do a pre-recorded video and drop it in the group with all of the details about the shred, including the cost, Sarah. I'm finalizing all of those details tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 4th of July. Wow. Felt like I had one more day. So yeah, I'm finalizing everything tomorrow, and then I will announce it on Wednesday along with the application. It will be a application only process, as I said. So I will announce everything and share the application for anybody who's interested in doing that. Cool. Yeah, so as usual, y'all feel free to ask any questions in the group, share anything in the group. Happy to have you. More to come on this 6-week shred mini cut challenge. Stay tuned for that. And I'll see you in the group in the meantime, unless we have any other questions. I don't see any new ones, so cool. All right, ladies, good night. Have a wonderful, happy 4th of July to everyone in the USA. I think it was just Canada Day the other day to my ladies in Canada, so happy Canada Day to you. Rock and roll. Have a great week. Make it a good one. Good night.